name is Michael Hauser. I am originally from Piqua, but I left Piqua quite a few years ago, and then I've returned to Piqua, so it's kind of like you come back to where you start. I am really, as you can tell from the wrinkles and all that stuff, I am retired, but it hasn't really turned out that way because I'm still actively engaged in education. I teach at Edison, I teach at Sinclair, I work for a PBS teacher line, and I'm also playing in quite a few community organizations and ensembles, as well as several symphony orchestras around. So retirement is a little less than laid back, but that's the way it should be. I went to school as a young person at Piqua Public Schools, and I graduated from Piqua Central High School when there was a Piqua Central High School. And after that, I received a full tuition scholarship to Capital University to study music. So I went to Capital University and went through that program in 3.5 years rather than 4 by going to school at University of Dayton during the summer. So after that, I got hired by the Columbus Public Schools, worked in a federal program there for 1.5 years, and then for the in a junior high school teaching instrumental music. But while I was doing that, I was also taking graduate work at Ohio State, and I did a master's degree while I was teaching, so it was one of those night experiences, so you didn't get any sleep for years. But I also had the opportunity to go to University of Hawaii and begin some study in ethnomusicology, which prompted me to make my next big professional step. I decided that I wanted to do some research overseas because we were approaching a PhD program in an experimental thing at Ohio State in ethnomusicology. So just so happened that I ran into somebody that formerly had worked in the Far East, and she knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody. So I applied for the Department of Defense Dependent Schools, thinking I would take a year's leave of absence, do the research that I needed to do in order to start to do the study that needed to be done for a doctoral dissertation. Well, 1 year turned into 33 years. So I was in Korea for 2 years. I was a music teacher in Korea. And then I transferred to Europe, to Germany, and went to Germany what you would consider to be an unusual way. I went from Seoul, Korea to Yokohama, Japan, got on a Russian liner, took the Russian liner to Siberia, and spent the summer traveling what was then the Soviet Union, and ended up in Nuremberg, Germany, also went to Poland and Czechoslovakia. Ended up in Nuremberg, Germany, which still looks like paradise to me after that experience. While I was in the Far East, though, I did have the opportunity to study at the National Classical Music Institute in Seoul, Korea, which is a one-of-a-kind institute in the world. In fact, the musicians there, their relatives all go back to the court musicians in the various dynasties in Korea. So, as luck would have it, I had a particularly good teacher, or I don't know if he was good or not, but I was serious about studying this. And he entered me in a competition for Korean music while I was there, and I was a grand prize winner. So I've got this trophy that stands here. I don't know what to do with it. If anybody wants it, I may put it on eBay and see if maybe I can pay for new tires on my car or something like that. But there have been a lot of opportunities that have come across my way as a result of going clear back to Piqua Public Schools. There were a few teachers that really took what they saw seriously and encouraged me. One of them was Fred Roberts, who was the director of music there, not the band director. He actually had the orchestra. And he was the one that actually told me and one of the other students, he said, "I've arranged for an audition for you at Capital University," and that started the ball rolling. The other portion of it was I was taking clarinet lessons from Jim Jeffries, who was the band director at Miami East at that time. Fortunately, he was studying with the principal clarinetist of the Cleveland Orchestra, that was Robert Marcellus. So he would take my unique problems, which I had more than my share of, to Robert Marcellus, and he was probably paying hundreds of dollars for these lessons and coming back and giving it to me for $2.50 a lesson. So I profited from that. A lot of it's just plain luck of the draw. But while I was in Europe, I was in a place that would be considered less than desirable. In fact, many of you have heard of Rommel, and his escapades with tanks and all of that stuff. I was in one of the places where he trained, and it was, well, it was an experience. But as luck would have it, since I was in Europe, I had the opportunity to go to Salzburg and study at the Mozarteum. We had a team come through and look at the staff, and well, it was what you typically call a search and destroy. You know, there were some problems going on there. So anyway, this one guy came in and he said, well, have you ever heard about ORF? And I said, yeah, I went to the Institute. And he said, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm asking myself the same question. So he said, have you applied for a transfer? And I said, yes. And he said, well, where? And I said, Munich, Berlin, or London. 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from the superintendent in the Munich district, and he said, I cannot offer you Munich, but I can offer you Bad Tölz. And here's plus. The administrator is the best in Europe. They have a PTA that has unlimited funds, and you will have a music room, which I didn't have in Baumont. So I thought, well, I'll go there and see what that's like. 13 years later, and I had gotten interested in technology because I had synthesizers in my room as well as instrumental music and vocal music. I started degrees in computers. Actually, I started in summer school when I came back to Ohio and went to this school that nobody's ever heard of, Edison State Community College. That's where I had my first computer course, and to this day, it's the best computer course I had. The teacher there was definitely invested in our learning and helping me find my way. So my idea was to find techniques with these analog synthesizers that would allow me to use them effectively in creating interesting music for students. Well, that piqued my curiosity, so I ended up finishing an undergraduate degree from University of Maryland in technology and computer science, straight computer science. Then a master's degree in management information systems from Boston University, and a doctorate degree from an obscure university in Florida. But then this person came into my office, the director of the Munich district, and he said to me that I should apply for the computer job in his office. So I did, and I got that. So I spent probably about 15 years as a computer specialist in Munich. Well, part of it was in Munich, and then I was also part of the closure team. They usually referred to me as the kiss of death because I would come in and straighten out your database, because if we close your schools, you're going to be in real trouble if your records aren't straight. So, it was dealing with that stuff. So I finished my career with the Department of Defense as a computer specialist in the Heidelberg district. And the plus about that was we were asked to do a research project, to be involved in a research project. So we were involved in the DoD Presidential Technology Initiative. It was a $21 million project for 4 schools that I was primarily working in. And that turned out to be a really exciting experience. So I thought, where do we go from here? It's back to Piqua, Ohio, of course. So we've gone full circle. First experience with the arts and arts events. Of course, in our household, my mother had a piano, and she played piano, and not well, but it was part of entertainment. My parents liked to dance, so they would go to Les Shepherd's band when they would be having a dance, and at that time you could take kids in. So typically on a Saturday night, they'd take my brother and or me to those things. So I was really piqued by the big band sound of Les Shepherd and some of the other bands that were quite popular at that time in this area. Bobby Long had a band, and occasionally, as I got to be a teenager, I was asked to sit in the band occasionally, because my teacher at that time was one of the people in the band. So at that point, I had learned saxophone as well. So that's probably where I kind of got the bug. But I started to take piano lessons too with Frankie Neville from Sydney. Everybody from Sydney knows Frankie Neville, and that was a real awakening too. That was a good experience, which made starting another instrument like clarinet, a band instrument, a lot easier, because you learn notation, you learn how to read notation, so you take one of the difficult things off the table so you can focus in on embouchure and reeds and fighting with other people that are struggling with the same things. How many different instruments do I play? Well, or just play? Well, I was a woodwind major at Capital University, so I play primarily clarinet. I played in Mahler's First Symphony in Yellow Springs with their symphony. I played 5 different kinds of clarinets: E-flat sopranino clarinet, B-flat soprano clarinet, A clarinet, bass clarinet, and I have a C clarinet, and I called for that too, and I forget what the other one was. But I've got a whole collection of those. But I also play flute and piccolo. In University Orchestra at Capital University, I played flute and piccolo in that. I play oboe and bassoon as well. I can teach trumpet, trombone, and those. I've taught strings, so I play some of those instruments. Play some piano, and the only one I really haven't touched is harp. And I've always been told, if you can't carry it, don't play it. So they are heavy instruments, and I'm not touching it. But primarily my instrument is clarinet. That's what I play in the Piqua Civic Band, in the Sydney Civic Band, and in the ensembles that I play in. And right now I'm playing in the Miami Valley Symphony Orchestra, and I'm playing bass clarinet and soprano clarinet in that. It also calls for E-flat clarinet, E-flat sopranino, which is tiny. But, I got tired of carrying so many instruments that they don't need to know that I'm not going to play that in their concert coming up. Well, I don't let people know this, but before I started to take piano and so forth, I took tap dancing for 3 years. So again, there's a little bit of a sense of rhythm that you develop by, the German word is Bewegung, movement. So moving is really critical. And when you start watching some groups perform, many of them are moving. In fact, the Yamani Winds, a fantastic woodwind quintet, they never sit still. And if you're watching typical choirs at universities, a couple years ago I accompanied the Aeolian Choir from Oakwood University. Now, you may think Oakwood, Ohio. No, it's Oakwood, Louisiana or Alabama, I'm not sure which. That choir, their singing was fantastic, but the movement was just incredible, to the point that I kept thinking maybe I need a Dramamine because there was so much movement. But the other art forms that have influenced me, of course, living in Europe in the Far East, head to a museum anytime I get a chance. And now that I've moved back to Ohio, I teach at Edison. One of the courses I teach is humanities, Introduction to Humanities. And that's basically what you might call Introduction to the Fine Arts. Well, some of the fine arts I really didn't know that well until I started to do some reading about architecture and looking around Piqua and walking down Cowell Street, which is very close to where I live. And it's like, this blows me away. The architecture, you can actually see form and music and dance in the architecture in these communities, and it's been one of the really prominent things. And of course, when you get to literature, I was never really thrilled with literature and drama until I started to go to opera when I lived in Munich, and when I go to Vienna and Milan, and then a lot of the operas are based on literature, fine literature, Shakespeare and things like that. Some of the newer ones, I don't know what they're based on, but touching the newer art forms can sometimes be a challenge. About 1980, I went to Edison for my first computer course, and it was a course in basic programming. The crazy thing was, after I took that course, I thought I know a lot about basic, but I don't know anything about computers. So I went back to Munich, and we had a campus for University of Maryland there. So I took a course in Fortran, and then I realized I know a lot about basic and Fortran, but I don't know anything about computers. I had a computer at that point, an Apple II Plus, if you can imagine, that only did uppercase letters, and didn't do lowercase. So then I took a course in Pascal. Then I knew basic, Fortran, Pascal. I knew some COBOL, but I didn't know anything about computers. So one of my friends, Dr. Shawley, said, there's this course in Middletown, Connecticut, and I spent the summer there. And it was like, when I got back to Europe, it was like, I know, it's time for a change. It's time for a change, because I really had the bug then. The appropriate thing for me, though, now and then was, I was very definitely siloed in as a musician. That was all I did, music, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, teaching it and sometimes playing, not playing as much as I would like to have. But then I moved into computers, and everything was computers. I was siloed in that. Had very little contact with music other than as an observer, not making music. Moving back here has given me the opportunity to work in the arts and also the sciences, because I teach IT courses as well. I teach IT courses at Edison and also at Sinclair. I'll be teaching database this fall. So yeah, it's kind of like the balance. It's probably where we all should be, that certain balance. The arts give you a balance, particularly if you are siloed in one area. If I were an accountant and all I did would be accounting all day long, yeah, I'd probably have a lot more money than I do now, and my bank account would probably be, rather my checkbook would probably be balanced. But you know, even the accountant that I have is a musician, and it's kind of like when we go there, we talk accounting, we talk music, we talk the other arts. It's just amazing how it really expands you. In this community, and in I'll say the Miami County, because for me, the community is more than just simply downtown Piqua. I have been involved in the Arts Council, the Piqua Arts Council, but I also play in the Piqua Civic Band. I play in the Sydney Civic Band. I play in the Greenville Municipal Band and Concert Band. This season, Troy Civic Band is not having a season, but I play in that band too. And then I play in 3 ensembles. I play in 2 for You Winds, Mystic Winds, that's a woodwind trio, and Quintessential Winds. Now, Quintessential Winds has been doing quite a bit of playing at places like Edison, and we also did some playing for the Arts Council at Christmas time, and we usually do some playing like that, usually when we're asked. So we're involved in that. We play in churches. In fact, we have several church jobs coming up soon. One of them is here in Piqua and one's in Troy. And of course, with COVID going on, there has been this diminished opportunity for us to do performing. However, in, I think it was August, there was a birthday out at a particular assisted living that we were asked to play, but it had to be outside. So it was outside for half an hour, and it was like a real awakening to them. One of the people that was at this little birthday celebration came up and she said, I sold my house and I moved here 2 weeks ago, and I feel like a prisoner. And she said, this means so much to me, just hearing some music that she recognized. So our involvement has been with community that way. We've also done some playing for the early childhood education program at St. Boniface. So we're involved. We like to be involved. Attending arts events, well, right now there aren't a whole lot of them going on, and that's one of the problems. But now that we start to see things changing with some of the restrictions coming, lowering, we're getting more involved in that. And of course, I think it's amazing just simply to go in our library here in Piqua. That is absolutely a gold mine. The historical, or the museum that they used to have, the Piqua Museum, basically has been moved to the library, and instead of having a big area that's just the museum, they have it dispersed throughout the library. So it is really amazing to see this integrated into that particular structure. And again, from an architectural point of view, that's a Richardsonian architecture. It's really gorgeous to see that we didn't make that into a parking lot. The money was spent to invest in something beautiful in the city. So the other bit is we have recently played, we gave a full recital at the Hainer Center in Troy. That to me in Miami County is one of the richest resources we have. So in fact, we're doing some performing for the community down there as well, and the Porch Fest. We're performing for Porch Fest for Yellow Springs as well. So we're trying to be involved. It's good for us, and it's hopefully good for the people that hear us. And it hopefully will inspire some young talent to explore a little further. I did marvel at the flute player that's in our ensemble, has a granddaughter. The granddaughter kind of considers me an old grandpapa, because I knew her when she was really tiny. But she has gotten very much involved in an arts program in one of our communities here for the summer months. And she feels so good about that. And I think she's seeing things through different eyes. And I think she has talent. And that talent has all kinds of potential. I have a cousin who majored in graphic arts at a school north of here, university degree. And she went to, when she got married and moved to Kettering, she went to a community college down there, Sinclair, and took some other courses down there and ended up with graphic arts and knowledge of computers and turned it into a really lucrative job. So, I mean, the potential is there for putting together the arts and the sciences in a way that makes you feel good about what you're doing and also can help you make a healthy income. Theo Jensen, he's a kinetic sculptor, but he's an engineer, Scandinavia. And he does what you call kinetic sculpture. In other words, the sculpture moves. Kind of gives you the creeps when you see it happen. But he did say the divide in the arts and engineering are only in the mind. So it enhances, the arts enhance anything else you do, and the other way around. So, you know, rather than having everything be in a silo, it's kind of encouraging to see that some people are getting serious about the arts aren't going away, at least not in the Piqua City schools. They're strong and well, and, you know, we're quite familiar with what goes on in the choral music program, particularly out at Piqua High School. That's scary good stuff. And does it make a difference with the students? Oh yeah, you bet. It's really, really rich and encouraging. Why should you support arts events? Let me twist that a little bit. Why should communities have rich arts experience in their communities? Well, you want your property values to go up or down. If you have opportunities, it's going to keep property values up. You can see the communities that have rich arts programs, their property values seem to go up. If it seems like it's blasé, nothing going on, it's kind of, the community starts to reflect that. It says something about the community. It says, you know, life is worth living. So let's work hard, let's play hard, let's make things beautiful, let's make things work for everybody. It provides rich opportunities. But from a materialistic point of view, one of the real reasons would be it keeps your property values high. It's good for the students. And the other thing, if you want your students to learn, I don't think I would have had what I would consider to be the minimal success I have had in life had it not been for a rich arts program in this community. And that was located in the schools. But for many people, it goes beyond the schools where you have like your community bands and your community choirs. It's just really good for it. The visual arts, you know, people like to have things that are pretty. You want an ugly yard or a pretty yard? Well, they're using their artistic skills and mindset in order to make it beautiful. So, yeah, it's essential. It's essential. It's part of life's blood. It's one of the things that makes us human. What does success look like for me? Well, you know, there are people that come up to me and they have said to me, "You've had an interesting life." And I look at them and I say, "Had? It's only going to get better. It's only going to get better." So it's not looking out of the back window. Success is what you're doing now and beyond. And success is also getting to, well, like the concert. The real joy, once you think about it, at the high school with the show choir, it is not when they do the performance. It's all that preparation. That is working with other people, learning to know what excellence is all about. That's part of it. That's part of it for me anyway. People think I'm crazy, but I'm still taking courses. My next course will not finish until the middle of October. And it's not in the arts, it's actually in education. So success to me means continued learning. Lifelong learning is absolutely essential. If there is a fountain of youth, it is learning. I will repeat that because it bears hearing. If there is a fountain of youth, it is learning. The other thing, a college professor of mine said, busy people are happy people. Now, I know some people that are my age that are retired, and they have more aches and pains and complaints than I think most of us have time for. Now, my neck is killing me. I was at the chiropractor yesterday. But, you know, when you're involved in things, you don't have time to think about how bad that hurts. So it's a quality of life thing, it really is. Success is quality of life. Success is learning. So essentially that's what it is for me. What advice to give to young people? And maybe not just young people. I mean, a lot of my students are 30 and 40 years old. My oldest student was 92 years old, by the way. Lifelong learning. He was serious about it. What advice and what I would give? Pursue your passion. Pursue your passion. Find your strengths, pursue your passion. And also, think outside of your comfort zone. Look at things you've never looked at. Explore things you've never done before. Go to Springfield to the Westcott House. That was by Frank Lloyd Wright. Find a house in Piqua that's following the same architecture. It will start to open your mind in ways you never thought. You will look at problems totally differently after you explore outside of your comfort zone. Now that's talking around the question and the advice. Some advice I would have given to myself would have been to find a teacher more earlier, like a Jim Jeffries, who was studying with a master teacher. Then probably some of the things that I learned early on that were not correct would have been corrected early on. That's from a practical point of view. We all run into that issue, finding quality teachers. And again, follow the quality teachers and the quality experiences. And don't listen to your old brother.